Welcome to Feeling Asian, a podcast where two Asians talk about their feelings. My name is Youngmi Mayer.
And I'm Brian Park.
And today we have a solo episode, but we have a very interesting discussion. But before we get started, we're going to do Patreon shout-outs.
As we always do.
You know the
Welcome
drill.
to Feeling Asian. We have a Patreon. Long story short, if you like the podcast, support us on Patreon at patreon.com/feelingasian. Any donation amount goes a long way, but at the very least, you receive a shout out on the podcast, where Youngmi and I guess who you are based on your name alone.
I want to say if you put in a certain amount, you get to hang out with us once a month in our Zoom happy hours. Next month, it's going to be in real life. So come on, everyone. Don't you want to hang out with me and Brian in real life with my BO and everything?
Just to give our listeners a little teaser, we've had 2 exclusive Zoom Patreon hangouts.
And we talk shit.
In the first one, Youngmi brought up BO. In the second one, Youngmi brought up BO again. And all of our wonderful patrons had to remind Youngmi, you brought this up the last time.
I was like, you know what? I like BO. God, I got to stop talking. I'm like disgusting myself at this point. Happy Pride to everybody. Maybe we should add, maybe going forward, if you are a subscriber to our Patreon, and obviously you're going to get a shout out, please include your pronouns, because I don't want that to be, obviously I respect everyone's pronouns, and it's very important to us that we get that correct.
Sweet. All right, Youngmi. How are you feeling?
I am feeling...
I am going to say that now, so far, this episode seems kind of off, and I feel like it's because we haven't recorded in a week and a half, and I think
and I went to San Francisco.
The chemistry is a little stilted right now.
Well, also, there's another thing. I have an update for everybody about my mental health. So I guess I'll start on this note. I feel like it's probably been like almost 2 months now. I mentioned that I saw a psychiatrist, and I had I've been having issues that, I've had all my life, but in the last year during quarantine, they got a little out of hand. Because I have ADHD, and obviously I had a lot of the symptoms, and all my life I was like, it's fine, right? But then during quarantine, I think because of the lack of a schedule, it just like my life in a certain way completely fell apart. And I'm gonna be like very honest for a second. There were a lot of things that I was doing that was very problematic that got a little out of hand, that I don't even think I told you, Brian. Like, I feel like I was drinking like a little, like way more than I should have been, which was worrying me. And, I have like depression and anxiety, but like a lot of that stems from like what I said, not having a schedule and being overwhelmed by not being able to schedule myself. And I know that we had like a few arguments during quarantine about me having a hard time getting my work done or my responsibilities done on time for the podcast. And so all those things, I feel like those are happening before quarantine, but I think they got way worse. And finally, I was like, I have to see a psychiatrist, because I know I have ADHD, and I know that I should at least try different methods to see if any of them work. So I finally got the diagnosis that I had was like, I think 2 months ago, but then I saw another psychiatrist, and I got put on a Adderall, but I got put on a very, very low dose, and it's like really changed my life.
Whoa.
It was like night and
Are
day.
you-
Yeah.
Whoa. So do you take it? Like, how does it work? Now that you're prescribed it, do you take it every day?
I take it every day. I got prescribed like I think it's like the lowest dose, which is like 5 milligrams, and I take half of that. So it's extremely like a
Very low.
extremely small dose, but it's like night and day. Like I don't know, have you noticed a change in me recently, like in the past week?
So you, as listeners, as you heard, Youngmi and I, this has been, we've butt heads about this a lot. Where, I felt like I would have to, remind you a lot to get certain things done, like respond to an email, and, I remember the text you sent me. Well, actually, we got into this cadence where every morning I would just sort of send this to-do list for you. But then one morning, you texted me at like 9 in the morning, and I saw that you had responded to like 30 emails at 8:30 in the morning. And then you texted me and you said, "Hey, I finally saw a psychiatrist. I started taking Adderall. I don't know if it's working." And as I was reading through all of your email responses at 8:45 in the morning, I thought to myself, like, oh yeah, this is definitely working. This is working. Youngmi is, I felt like I'm used to it now. I mean, I noticed a change where you just seem more focused, but at that mark, it was a drastic difference from one day to the next. Like that day when you told me that you started taking Adderall, because it was like that Bradley Cooper movie Limitless, where he takes that drug and then suddenly he's like maximum efficiency, maximum knowledge, maximum everything. But no, it was just that one day. I feel like now I'm like used to it. I don't notice anything that different.
I feel like in a way I almost felt like I had to say I'm taking a very low dose of Adderall, like just like because it makes me feel like a drug addict to say that I'm on it, which isn't true. It's obviously helping me a lot. But I have noticed that. So what happened before I took the medication was that the reason why I could never like respond to emails on time and stuff like that is that I would have this, like, if anyone's listening and experiences this, like I like to say things like this on the podcast just so people feel free to like be open about their own mental illness issues. But like I would have this overwhelming sense of dread just to like looking at an email, right? Yeah. And I just like couldn't do it. Like I couldn't open an email. I couldn't check my mail. I couldn't like check my voicemail. And my friend Jen, whose podcast that I did, she has a podcast about women who have ADHD. And she said it's because when you wake up and you have ADHD, you have like this like, you have like a deficit of dopamine. So everything from that second on has to like, you're trying to get to like 0 because you're like below sea level, right? And so everything that you're trying to do from the morning on is like to make you feel dopamine because you're at a deficit. And so it's very hard to wake up in the morning when you have ADHD and then have to do things that are not going to give you dopamine. Like that just seems impossible because your brain is like struggling already.
Oh,
does that make sense?
When I send you, so when I send you a text in the morning, hey, can you respond to this email ASAP? That does not give you dopamine in the morning.
That I'm not joking, and this is not your fault, Brian. But like that was this is not your fault, Brian.
That does not make you happy and gives you a reward feeling.
When I saw that, it would like destroy my morning. I would feel so in a panic.
Oh God!
Like I would like just get so overwhelmed and anxious when I would see your emails, and then I just couldn't do it, which I know sounds
then would exacerbate
weird.
The problem.
Yeah, and then another sign if you're struggling with ADHD is that in the morning because of the scheduling thing, you have a hard time being like, okay, I'm gonna get up, brush my teeth, put my pants on, brush my hair, take my son to school. Like it's just like you don't have that kind of organization in your brain. So you're just like, you wake up every morning and you're like, now what? Now what? Like that. And then you get overwhelmed because there's so many ways that things that you could do. You could like brush your teeth. You could have breakfast. You could go for a run.
Yeah.
You could
Yeah.
put a dress on, put pants. Like there's too many options and you can't like figure out which way to go. So then you get very overwhelmed and then you end up like staying in bed for 5 hours, which is like what I would do.
Jesus.
Just like
That sounds dreadful.
paralyzed by choice, basically. Yeah.
Oh God. Well, I don't know. I mean, it seems like you're on the mend now. Would you say so?
I mean, I felt better in the beginning, but now I'm like, it was kind of honestly, now that I'm talking about it, it was like it was kind of a huge deal because when I was talking to the psychiatrist, I had to do all these like questionnaires and like talk to her about like my day to day. And one of the things that kept coming up was, there's like a very long, extensive questionnaire. And I remember one question was like, do you find that when you're working, other people have to do a lot of things for you? And then I just like, that made me think of you. And like, I just realized every morning Brian has to wake up and basically send me a to-do list because if he doesn't, I can't do it. Do you know what I mean? And I felt like really guilty and sad. And like that's how it is for me, whenever I work anywhere, like even at the restaurant, like people would have to constantly like email me and like text me 10 minutes before meetings, or else I just wouldn't show up because I would forget, And it's not like I'm choosing to do that. It's just that, my brain works a certain way. And it like during the questionnaire with the psychiatrist, I got really emotional because I told her, I was like, I'm going to be honest with you. I feel really guilty right now. And I feel really bad. And she was like, no, it's okay. Like, this is just like a brain chemistry thing and you shouldn't feel bad. But
yeah. Why stress to you that you shouldn't feel bad? I know you feel really guilty and you apologized, but that line of communication was the compromise. Because I remember we had these conversations and I stressed to you, I don't mind sending you these to-do lists and following up with you. I just want to make sure that it doesn't annoy you. As long as it doesn't annoy you, then I'm okay with it. Like, I don't mind sending follow-ups and asking you to do shit. And I get it could be micromanagerial, but I understand that you operate in a certain way. So if you need those reminders, I was okay with doing it. That didn't annoy me. My fear was that it was like bothersome to you.
No, I
and you
honestly,
said it didn't.
Yeah,
so that's
I honestly
kind of like how it worked.
I believe that you're okay with it, but I felt guilty. Do you know what I mean? Like it feels bad. It's like, damn, like why can't I do this for myself? Do you know what I mean? Like I believe, I trust you, Brian. I believe you as my friend that if it bothered you, you would tell me. But I just felt guilty. Like, like it's, I know I shouldn't compare myself, but like, you can't help it. Be like, oh, if Brian's co-host was somebody else, they wouldn't need this. You know what I mean? Like it's just like natural to think that way, I think.
Well, so you said in the beginning you noticed a difference, and then do you think now you're like, do you find that it's getting harder to like acclimate to this new routine, or have you noticed a difference? Has anyone told you? Like, do you feel like when you wake up in the morning it feels less overwhelming?
That's like a striking difference. Like in the morning now, I can wake up and just be like, I'm gonna brush my teeth and wash my face. I'm gonna make breakfast, and then I'm gonna take my son to school. Like I can do that great. Now. And then the emails thing, now I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna open my email, and like, why am I freaking out about opening my email? Do you know what I mean? I'm just like, I'm just gonna do it. And so that's the biggest difference I've experienced.
Wow.
And it does feel like all these things are more under control.
Shit. That's nuts. So you're like taking measures and doing the
Finally.
thing.
Yeah.
I'm proud of you.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
So I guess that's how I'm feeling. How are you feeling? I want to hear from you, my dear friend Brian.
Oh, I love this. This is the post Young Me ADHD treatment era of feeling Asian, where we refer to each other as my dear friend Young Me. How are you feeling? Thank you for asking, Brian. Now, my dear friend Brian, I'm going to return the question to you. How are you feeling? I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. That sounded like a lie. No, I want to say that I am feeling inspired, partially because last week I went to a stand-up comedy show. And I went to it. I've talked about it on the podcast before, how my feelings towards stand-up I'm over it. I don't enjoy it that much. But I saw a couple of my friends who I had not seen since pre-pandemic were performing at a show close to my house. And I didn't have any plans that night. So I was feeling kind of in the mood to be social. And, you know, that's kind of what's hard for me, is showing up to social gatherings by myself, because I have this anxiety and fear that no one wants me there. And I remember texting you what you were doing that night. And then you told me to just go to the stand-up show and how it'll feel nice to see old friends that you had not seen since before the pandemic.
Yep.
And because of that, I decided to go. And you were right. It felt really nice to see, familiar faces and catch up with everyone. But I left feeling really inspired. I don't know. I've had this itch to start doing stand-up again.
Oh.
In my free time, I'll start. Yeah, I'm ready to ruin my life again.
I was gonna say, Brian, is this the return of Brian doing stand-up?
Yeah, and so I just had a really great time, and it was really nice just to laugh and see my friends become so much funnier since I had last seen them, and it was really cool. I think I was approaching, I don't know if anyone else has felt this way, but I was observing this art form as basically like a spectator, kind of. Because I have this podcast, the pressure of stand-up has kind of been lifted off of my shoulders. And so I could just exist and be there and enjoy it. Whereas when I was performing stand-up every night, it would become this weird competition thing. And I would watch other people's sets like, they're not funny. That's such a hack joke. I'm going to do better than, do you know what I mean? Whereas I kind of just went there without any pretense. It was more, I'm bored and I want to see people. And it was a lot of fun. And it inspired me. I went home that night and started writing in my notebook, and I think I'm going to start doing stand-up pretty soon.
Wow, you heard it here first. Feeling Asian, Brian's back at it. That's so exciting. I'm excited, Brian.
And then I also saw this comedy special recently on Netflix. It's by this comedian named Burnham, and the special is called Inside. And during the pandemic, he wrote, shot, edited a special all inside. And if you're not familiar with Bo Burnham's work, he does musical comedy. So I would say in the first 5 to 10 minutes, it does feel a little bit tedious because it's cute. Musical comedy is kind of cute. And then hearing a song after another song, it can feel kind of like, all right, now what, But It's an hour and a half. It was so fucking good and mind-blowing. It is phenomenal just how talented he is. That it's just nuts. It is insane. It is insane to think that there are people on this earth who have that kind of artistic talent and vision. Like, I was watching it. I was, it's mind-blowing. He does everything.
So I told my friend that I would watch it with him later, so I haven't watched it yet because I've heard so many people saying that online.
Yeah.
So I'm like excited.
I left feeling very inspired. Is how I felt.
What is so good about it? Because I hear like people saying how great it is, and I like can't wrap my head around what it is.
I don't want to give out too much detail, but
don't.
Just from a skill set standpoint, it's really remarkable.
Like a comedic skill.
Just he lights himself. He shot everything. He did all the cinematography. He wrote all the songs. He edited it in post. He color corrects it himself. Like top to bottom. Usually with Netflix shows, you have a huge budget to pay for cast, for lighting people, for sound people, for editors. Except he did this all by himself during the course of the pandemic.
Is it wrong that hearing this just makes me feel like shit about myself? And now I'm like, all I did was make 3 TikTok videos and talk with Brian. I'm a loser.
No. I felt that way too. And I feel this way when because it's somewhat, we're technically in the same line of work as him.
Yeah.
He literally has a song talking about how he's turning 30, and I'm like, you've achieved everything. Like your project before this was directing and writing a movie called 8th Grade, which got nominated for an Oscar. Like you've done everything. You are the elite of artistic expression. But I go back and forth because as I was watching, I mean, at least you made 3 TikTok videos, Young Me. I didn't write anything. I didn't even write a single joke. And meanwhile, he fucking shot and edited and wrote an entire Netflix special by himself.
Do we think that he's on Adderall? Is that... Because I have answered some emails in the last week, Brian. Let me tell you.
I can tell that my relationship to this artistic comparison has become healthier. Where before, and I certainly felt this way a little bit, where I was watching it and I have this self-criticism of, why do I even try when there's this person who not only is younger than me, but so much more talented, and everyone knows it. So what is even the point? That's sort of the negative thought that I have in my brain. That's one half of me. But then the other half, which that I think rings more true to how I exist right now and why this special left me so inspired, is that, well, if he can do it, why can't I? And it doesn't even have to be amazing, but just the pursuit of even trying is what makes it worth it, I guess. Yeah. Like the best I can do is like at least try. You know? Like he's one person and he's able to accomplish it, so fuck it. Like my thing may not be as good, but who knows? Like might as well try.
I have to say, when I said that thing earlier, like, when I hear somebody that has the same amount of, it's like that thing, like a billionaire is the same 24 hours as you do. And like, I know that's wrong because billionaires are corrupt and they didn't do anything by themselves anyway. But like, that when I get that old feeling like, wow, like we had the same quarantine and he did this and I did nothing. That's a very old thought for me. And I have to say, I said it sort of jokingly when I said it because I've moved away from that thought enough where I don't feel that sort of sad anger or like resentment when I see somebody else being successful that I used to. Like now I'm like I will look at like my little thing, my little like
my little
cute
art.
My little art that I do every day. Every day I take my little Adderall and do my little art. I'll look at that and I'll be like, no, that's good and that's worthy, and it's not Bo Burnham and whatever the hell he's doing, but like, that's like, who cares? It has nothing to do with me. Like, other people can have huge successes next to me, and it doesn't really mean anything for me and my art. You know, it doesn't like hurt it in any way.
No, absolutely, and
yeah.
I'm sure there's people out there who hated that special, but they see
Really?
your online content
Yeah.
and they love yours. Do you know what I'm saying? It's not.
I don't think that's
like
true, but
art is subjective, and
yeah.
I know I know you well enough where you don't believe it's true, but I remember when you first started making TikToks, and you didn't think it was gonna lead to anything. You were just like, I think I'm gonna start making TikToks. Like, I think I could be good at it, and now, like, for the right reasons, you've amassed this following, and people know you through TikTok. But there's people out there who see your TikTok account and see your work and probably feel the same feelings of intimidation and self-doubt when it comes to their own like comedic pursuits or like making video content, you know?
Yeah, I have to say that's, you know, like, I'm glad we're talking about this, because that was like my knee-jerk thing that I said. That's an old feeling. It's an old reaction. It's like old muscle memory that I used to have. And honestly, after I said it to you, I was like, oh, actually, I don't feel that way in a big way anymore. And that's like growth for me. That's personal growth for me as an artist and like a creative person, you know, that like comparison and like, because that's a very sad, heavy, toxic feeling. Yeah. You know, and I'm glad that I've like worked through it. Yes, thank you, Bo Burnham. Thank you for showing me that you're more talented and that it's okay.
Yeah, Bo Burnham. Thank you for inspiring me and giving me new resolve every morning when I wake up and make my little art, as in I send 10 emails between 9 a.m. to 10 a.m.
I did it. I sent 10 emails today. I am up there with the...
I'm an artist. I will say that my medium is
email replies.
Just as an aside, there's an artist who sold an imaginary statue for tens of thousands of dollars.
Legend.
And then the buyer gets a certificate, and he said the statue can exist in. There's no particular lighting requirement because it exists in your imagination.
It's literally the emperor's new clothes. That's literally the concept behind that, right?
Legend.
That person made that sculpture during quarantine. So you know what? Maybe we're too hard on ourselves.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine?
Was this person white?
Yes, he was white.
Of course, a white person made nothing and sold it for tens of thousands of dollars, and that person's name is...
dying at the thought of, you know, keeping my artistic thing secret from my parents. All they know is that I am an artist working really hard on a sculpture, and then I finally show it to my Korean immigrant parents, and they're like, "What is it?" "Look, Mom, it's an imaginary sculpture. It exists in your mind." My parents would probably Could you imagine showing that to a Korean mom?
They would take you to the 정신병원. They
would take you to the psych ward.
Sorry. We're not making fun of mental illness, but that's what Korean parents would do. Not saying that that's nice, but...
Oh my God.
Yeah, so you know what? Anyone listening feeling bad because they didn't do a Bo Burnham special during quarantine, you know what? At least you didn't make an imaginary statue and use your white privilege to sell it for hundreds of thousands of dollars. At least, not that.
Oh, wow. Well, so that sums up how I'm feeling. I'm feeling inspired. I'm starting to write in my joke notebook again.
Nice.
It's a weird feeling opening up your joke notebook, and then have you like read through your old ideas?
No, never. Like, I burned them.
Why did
So embarrassing. I have one premise right now. I did do it at a show. Do you want to hear it? It's a very loose joke, but it did get laughs. I'm gonna say it on the podcast.
Oh wow.
It's
okay.
the joke is like, you know, like white. This is like when I was like having sex with some white guy that was like really like muscular and tall and looked very normy. Like he was like a financy, you know, what's that brand? Arctic's windbreaker wearing like Rolex
like
finance
Arc'teryx,
guy.
Patagonia, yeah.
And we were walking around together and like everybody like respected us and like moved out of our way on the sidewalk. And I was like, damn, it's so nice being a fucking tall, muscular white guy. And so I wrote this joke where I was like, everyone thinks it's great but I feel really bad for like white, like handsome finance guys because no matter where you go, you're the reason that place sucks. That's the punchline. Like, you know, like you go to like a cool club in Bushwick, you're like, man, this is like some underground hipster club. This is the coolest club in New York. And then you see like that guy, that white finance guy, and you're like, this place sucks. Like anywhere you go, like a cool like restaurant in the West Village, you're like, this is the hot new spot in New York City. And then you see a finance guy, you're like, never mind. It's overrated. The normies know about it now.
Oh my god.
It's a good joke, right? I'm gonna work on that.
It's good. It's good. I'm also gonna share an idea that I had on this podcast where so I joined LinkedIn like 3 weeks ago.
Nice.
Yeah. I am a man in his early 30s who just joined LinkedIn, and it is a depraved, insane place. I mean, it is where all those aforementioned finance guys go to use social media sincerely is LinkedIn.
Do they really use it sincerely? I have no idea what LinkedIn is.
It is nutso. It is nutso. People will write these long diatribes, and it starts off as this really serious essay being like, after much thought and rumination, I did a lot of self-reflection, and after a lot of thinking and personal growth and realizing where my priorities lie in life, I am tremendously proud to announce that my next step in this journey is to become the account manager for a SaaS cloud-based software company. And it gets like 1,000 likes. And everyone's like, great job. But on LinkedIn, you can endorse people for skills. And normally it's really corporate businessy skills. So it'll be like Youngmi Mayer, Brian Park endorsed Youngmi Mayer for growth marketing. And I'll write something.
Yeah.
But I feel like LinkedIn should include like more useful skills that you can endorse people for. Mm-hmm. So for instance, something like Youngmi Mayer I endorse Youngmi Mayer for her ability to choose a restaurant to eat at in a group setting after 3 people in the group have said, I don't know, I don't care. I'm down for whatever.
Yeah. I'm good at that.
That's your skill.
That's so good.
Oh, I'm saying that makes me want to crawl into a hole. We just did our bits on our podcast.
Ew.
Embarrassing. Fuck.
No, yours is good. We're going to work on it, and you're going to see them 5 years in our special. So we work slow.
Anyways, Youngmi, you went on your trip to San Francisco, and I know that you wanted to do a little post-game recap.
I actually have like this big thought and idea. So I went to San Francisco. I used to live there, right? Almost 10 years ago now. 9 years ago, I moved to New York. And I lived there for 7 years. And I have a lot of very good friends that live in San Francisco, like my core friend group, I would call it. And, like I've said, I started doing stand-up like 4 years ago now. And it was a very hard shift. I know that most people that listen to podcasts have only known me as like a podcaster or a comedian person. But before that, I had this like big epiphany in therapy where I've always wanted to be a performer and a comedian, but I never thought I deserved to do what I wanted to do with my life. So I was basically 4 years ago, I was just a very quiet, private person. I was like a caretaker for my ex-husband who was, very well known. And I was like sort of in this role, I think that a lot of like cis-het women fall into, which is taking care of a man or a family member, having children, being a homebody, even though my parents are very liberal and sort of like feminist adjacent, open-minded people, and they didn't really raise me like that. I became like that because of my upbringing and watching their very traditional dynamic. This is, stuff that I've talked about in the podcast already, but when that shift happened, I don't think I've ever really talked about this on the podcast. When that shift happened where I was like more of a traditional, like what you would think of as like a cishet woman in this society, and then I decided to not do that and just live for myself. There was a shift in transition and a falling out among a lot of my friends. And because they got into this relationship with me as a friend.
Like that version of you.
Yes. On the basis of that we were all sort of like on the same page and we all had the same sort of life. And when at one point I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to just live fully like how I want to live, right? That was very difficult for a lot of people because and this is where it gets very difficult for me to talk about because I don't want to place judgment on other people, but my assumption and my point of view is that for some people, a lot of people that I knew that were in relationships or marriages, like I lost a lot of those friends because a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are in unhappy marriages. And even though my marriage wasn't that unhappy, it wasn't working and I decided to walk away. And I think if you're in the same sort of situation and your friend doesn't and you can't do that or don't want to do that, you can't really be friends with that person anymore. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, if you're both,
well,
like,
I can't.
Yeah.
I mean, I can only relate to it on a more surface level where I'm single, but I'm starting to have more and more friends who are married or have kids now, and those friendships have kind of, they're almost like dissipated because we're just at different stages in our life. Whereas I think for you, it's like, yeah.
It's interesting because I still have a lot of friends that are married, but what I've noticed is that they're in very, very good, healthy relationships where they love each other, and it's like a solid, and they of course they don't care about my relationship status because my marriage was never like their marriage to begin with, it was just like sort of anyway, but that also extends to the fact that I have like where I feel very proud of myself and like I feel like a very good feminist because now I no longer do anything for the validation of a man or like to want to get in a relationship with a man. Like that's not my number one priority at all. Like I have a child. I don't want to get married ever again. I don't really want any more children. And even that is a little weird because a lot of people that are 36-year-old cishet women, they're like, maybe they don't even want to, but I think they're conditioned by society to feel like they have to get married or have kids at my age. And so that's kind of like a hard thing for me when I'm trying to make friends. There's all these things that don't fit with a lot of other people, but then there's a lot of women that are my age who don't want to get married and have never been married, right? And so the reason I bring that up is because I had a fight with my friend in San Francisco. And this is my point of view, and I'm very aware that she might listen to this. But in my point of view, she was upset because I went somewhere with her and I acted like myself. I was just being loud, saying inappropriate jokes. I'm a comedian. And at the end of the day, I'm at this point where I don't hate myself anymore. Like I used to be like, I used to go and like, whatever, drink too much and then be too loud. And then the next day be like, I'm an idiot or whatever. Right.
Right.
But I've done a lot of work, in therapy to like love that part of myself. Like I that's like an integral part of who I am as a person. I'm loud And nothing that I do in my head is inappropriate or bad.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, and she was like, well, you were like, your jokes are really inappropriate. And I'm not to judge her like taste, but they just weren't inappropriate. And I felt very much like she was still in this place where she was performing for the male gaze. You know what I mean? Like, there were men there, and like, you know, it almost felt to me like you're kind of like, I was like arguing, you know, and being loud and stuff like that. And it very much felt to me like, oh, I've flown this coop where I don't give a shit if anyone here like likes me. I like me. And what I'm saying is something I feel is true. So if none of the guys here want to fuck me, I don't give a fuck. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's how I feel in my head.
Right. No,
And
I think.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I'm hearing it from your perspective.
Yeah.
I don't know the context. I don't know the details. I don't know what you've said.
Mm-hmm.
I will say though that you should I think I've seen like your growth, and I think it is good. Like, it's a hard thing to love yourself and embrace certain part, like just embracing yourself and what makes you you. And I don't think you should have to compromise on that. And it seems like I see, but also on the flip side, but also on the flip side, I will say that I think there is like, this is just me, I tend to err on the side of conservatism in this regard, where I think there is a certain time and a place for certain things where, like, I'm going to use the most extreme example where, like, if I'm at a baby shower, I'm not going to, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to, like, crack these offensive jokes because it's just inappropriate and it's more self-serving to me. Or there's been plenty of times where I've been in outings where I know that fundamentally we are just not the same types of people, but I'm not gonna be quote unquote true to myself and just be like, you guys are all fucking idiots, I'm never gonna fucking see you again. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's how I felt during the thing. I was like, I don't care about any of these people here. But like, I just want to I feel like because I've struggled so hard to get to this place of self-love that I feel almost like the need to really defend myself here. This was a drunken, like, someone's crushing a beer can on their forehead, like, party. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
With a bunch of fucking like head tattoo, eyeball piercing people. Do you know what I mean? It was like in fucking California, people were on fucking mushrooms. This was an appropriate situation for my jokes. There was no, I'm just gonna, to people who listen to the podcast, the jokes were like on par with like my jokes on the podcast.
Yeah.
You know, like there was this, okay.
Right. You've changed since your time in San Francisco. And I think that that happens. You change fundamentally. You're not as close with certain friends that you used to be, but it's a matter, it's best to just be who you are, and then you reach these inevitable outcomes, and it's a matter of like, okay, well, do I want to keep this person in my life and be respectful? Yeah. Because that's viable. Or maybe it's just you've grown apart too much, and maybe it's for the best, Yeah.
And it made me, the thing that made me sad was that it was like, do you know what? I'm going to switch this, not about my friend, just because I feel like that's a little awkward because, again, she might hear this. This is what it reminds me of. In therapy, I had to do a lot of work to like sort of work through the internalized misogyny that I grew up with my parents, right? My mom's entire life is like serving my dad, and I had to do a lot of work to like break that down in me, like the same beliefs that I have inside. And once I did that, I was so obsessed with trying to teach my mom, which is very condescending, but like teach my mom to like meet me where I was, because I'm at such a better place mentally, like I don't live for the approval of a man anymore. And I had to like go through this really painful process in therapy because I realized she didn't want to be where I'm at. She likes where she is. Do you know what I mean? And it's sort of like, that's what it reminded me of when I saw my friend. Like, she doesn't want to be fucking chaotic in the streets, single person, you know, never wanting to be married. I don't give a shit about men or whatever.
Sure.
Whatever the lies I tell myself.
Yeah.
Like, she's happy where she is, and it's not my place to be like, you need to be here with me, you know? And it's a sad realization. But
yeah.
Obviously, I have to respect other people and like their lives. It's not in my control. Anyway, that's it.
No, I agree. And I'm pretty sure I've said this before, even on this podcast, but I would say even in the beginning stages when we started this, I was pretty heavy in therapy, and that feeling was so new and fresh, where like expressing my emotions, and if I feel it, I'm just going to say it. And that's the truth of it. And I'm going to be unapologetic about it. And this is how everyone should live their lives. And I was imposing that on my family and being like, why are you repressing it? Why don't you see things the way I do? There's nothing to hide. As long as we're open and communicative, it's the best way possible. But I think I wouldn't say I've curbed myself from that, but I've kind of reframed how I see that kind of behavior, in that, am I like misconstruing, I'm confusing authenticity and transparency for selfishness. Because I do think that is also inherently very selfish, to try and impose your worldviews upon other people and like trying to change them, versus like, okay, I recognize what you've done. I'm not going to be able to change this person, so I'm just going to keep my thoughts to myself. I don't have to say everything that's on my mind as a vehicle for quote-unquote authenticity. Exactly.
I'm not imposing the way that I think on somebody else, but I have to say it was very hurtful for me to hear my friend telling me that I was inappropriate. Like, she was like, you were embarrassing me in front of my friends. And I was like, I wasn't, but okay. And then she was gaslighting me. She kept being like, everybody thought you were crazy. And I was like, everybody was fucked up. This guy was smoking out of a bong. Like, I don't think anyone like, I don't, it's so inappropriate when somebody says everyone thinks you're crazy. That's like classic gaslighting, you know? But I just feel like, I don't know. I just feel happy that I like stood up for myself. That was it. I'm just not ashamed of who I am at all. I just don't feel that way anymore. It's a yucky feeling. It took me years to get away from it. And I just don't feel bad about who I am anymore. And if somebody doesn't like it, I don't care. Like, I'm just not going to hang out with them. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, I feel so it was so hard to get to where I am, you know? That's all I'm going to say. But I also feel like now that quarantine's over, I think a lot of people are going to experience things like this with their friends. Yeah.
I think so, for sure. Especially when you're coming into contact with people who, it's like that medium zone. You know, like, yes, you were close friends, but you weren't seeing each other super frequently during the pandemic. And this was a hard time for everyone. And a lot of people changed. Even in our comedy community, there's comedians who got jacked during pandemic.
I did not.
Like, that was the choice they made.
How dare they? I have to say, Brian, I think you and I are one of the ones that got hot during the pandemic.
You see it, though.
Not that there's anything,
Wow.
Cut that out. That's mean. By hot, I mean I got an Adderall prescription.
Well, I was
just kidding. Yeah, I don't care anymore. Who cares? I'm not ashamed. This is who I am. Okay, I just want to say, like, one of the jokes that she had a problem with was I met one of her friends at the party.
Cut that out.
And then she was talking about her dad, and I was like, ooh, is your dad hot? Obviously a joke. And then my friend told me that was an inappropriate joke. Oh, we all
Okay.
know young me mayor is gonna make "is your dad hot" jokes. Okay, don't invite me to the party then.
Or like on that business call we had, and I asked if we should make a branded
And I was like,
OnlyFans.
ha, that's my business partner, Brian. I'm proud of him. I'm not ashamed of my friend.
Well, I think that does it for us. That was I feel good.
Yeah,
I'm glad we did this solo
I'm glad.
episode.
Thanks for letting me talk.
I hope you're not I hope you're not feeling yucky still, and you were able to burn some of that.
No, I didn't feel yucky. I
residual
was,
oil off.
I like I said, I don't feel bad about who I am. Like I'm happy with who I am, and like I, whatever. I'm glad that I said. And I also told my friend exactly what I said on the episode already. I said I think that this is like unfair to me, and I think if you don't like my personality, which is this is my and I've been like this for a long time now, And what are we gonna do? I don't know.
For our listeners out there, I'm still gonna try and pitch the Feeling Asian OnlyFans
You
collab.
know people would be into that, Brian. I just want to say, people keep DMing me like, Brian is so hot. Leave me out of this. Just DM Brian.
I don't get any DMs. This is the thing. They feel you're just more. You have a more warm energy that
I think they're trying to like make me
you.
tell you. I'm not gonna tell Brian who you are. You have to DM him.
Oh well, listeners, thank you for joining us this episode. We have so many wonderful guests planned for you this month, so keep an ear out for those. And thank you again for your continued support of the podcast. Youngmi and I have a lot of exciting things in store for you in 2021. And Youngmi, where can our listeners
YM
find
Mayor
you?
and then
on social
TikTok at
media?
Youngme Mayor. How about you, Brian?
You guys can find me on socials at It's Brian Park, and follow us on social media for our podcast page at Feeling Asian Podcast. And one quick shout out to our wonderful audio engineer, Sarah Pack. If you need a sound expert for your audio related projects, hit her up on Instagram at IM_PAKT. That's at Impact. And
Bye.
that's it. Bye, guys.